Today I'm back to Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions. And I'm back to Thomas Arst's essay. I have to apologize for jumping back and forth between this essay and the Red Book, but my objective is to help you understand what Dr. Jung was saying. I've spent a lot of years trying to understand that for myself. So I'm trying to put it in a way that is a bit easier for you. So what I'm going to do in the next few videos is I'm going to be reading from Dr. Arst's essay, then from the Red Book itself, and finally that will point back to Ion, and then I will go on with my reading of Ion. I am not planning to read the entire Red Book at this time, but I may read more portions of it as time goes on. On page 25 of his essay, Dr. Arst says, "Soul and the experience of God. The view that the soul is a place for the experience of God permeates the entire Red Book. Quote, I am ignorant of your mystery. Forgive me if I speak as in a dream, like a drunkard. Are you God?" Unquote. In Jung's encounter with the soul, God does not reveal himself as the God of theologians, who is dead and in need of renewal, but in overwhelming experiences of paradoxical dichotomies found within. For example, the God yet to come is the melting together of sense and nonsense in the supreme meaning. And as day requires night and night requires day, so meaning requires absurdity and absurdity requires meaning. Thus the divine encompasses meaning and absurdity, the greatest and the smallest, and the supreme meaning is great and small. It is as wide as the space of the starry heaven and as narrow as the cell of the living body. The new God is a coincidentia oppositorum, and God's birth takes place in the inner world. I saw a new God, a child. The God holds the separate principles in his power. He unites them. The God develops through the union of the principles in me. He is their union. Viewed in a broader context of Western intellectual history, Nietzsche at the end of the 19th century proclaims the death of God, while Jung in Liber Novus presents the rebirth of God at the beginning of the 20th century. Renewal of the God image. A key to Jung's oeuvre can be found in the encounter with the wounded mythical figure Izdubar, whom Jung would like to heal. Like modern man, Izdubar becomes paralyzed by the poison that is science, because this awful magic only leaves words in place of gods. Science has destroyed the capacity for belief. Now quoting, Izdubar, "But this science is the awful magic that has lamed me. How can it be that you are still alive even though you drink from this poison every day?" We've grown accustomed to this over time, because men get used to everything, but we're still somewhat lamed. On the other hand, this science also has great advantages, as you've seen. What we've lost in terms of force, we've rediscovered many times through mastering the force of nature. Now you perhaps see that we had no choice. We had to swallow the poison of science. Otherwise, we would have met the same fate as you have. We'd be completely lamed if we encountered it unsuspecting and unprepared. This poison is so insurmountably strong that everyone, even the strongest and even the eternal gods, perish because of it. If our life is dear to us, we prefer to sacrifice a piece of our life force rather than abandon ourselves to certain death." Unquote. Jung knows that he has to stand by the side of the lame and ill Izdubar, who is his brother, to cure him. After squeezing Izdubar into the size of an egg and putting him in his pocket, Jung succeeds in healing and transforming him, thus leading to a rebirth of mythic sensibility. In the teaching of the Red Book, man embodies the gateway through which crowds the train of the gods and the coming and passing of all times. With Izdubar's rebirth, an understanding of soul, self, and God becomes visible, which Jung would much later formulate in answer to Job as the desire of God to continuously incarnate. But already in his Red Book, this finds expression as follows, quote, "Just as the disciples of Christ recognized that God had become flesh and lived among them as a man, we now recognize that the anointed of this time is a God who does not appear in the flesh. He is no man, and yet he is a son of man, but in spirit and not in flesh. Hence, he can be born only through the spirit of men as the conceiving womb of the God." Unquote. Jung's new God, therefore, is a pneumatic God, as Jung elaborates in a letter to Joan Corey on February 29, 1919. The primordial creator of the world, the blind creative libido, becomes transformed in man through individuation, and out of this process, which is like pregnancy, arises a divine child, a reborn God, no more dispersed into the millions of creatures, but being one and this individual, and at the same time all individuals, the same in you as in me. Dr. Long has a little book, 7 Sermons ad Mortuus. There you find the description of the Creator dispersed into his creatures, and in the last sermon you find the beginning of individuation, out of which the divine child arises. The child is a new God, actually born in many individuals, but they don't know it. He is a spiritual God, a spirit in many people, yet one and the same everywhere. Keep to your time, and you will experience his qualities.